Hey guys, this is Danzi coming to you live from my little mini Danzyland studio man cave. I wanted to take the time today to talk to you about AcmeBarGig's head case, which I think is a fantastic suite of plugins that everybody that's a guitar player needs to at least try. Check out the demo at AcmeBarGig.com. It really is out of this world. I've done a lot of work helping to develop this product. I make nothing from it. It's a labor of love, and I just wanted to share with you guys how I get some of the tones that I get, some of the pre-prep before I go into the plug, how we set up the gain stage, the input gain stage. We'll work on tones, effects. I'll show you how things happen, how things work, what I do. And, we'll cover some tones, some good tones, some bad tones. I think it's important that we as guitar players really know what a good tone and a bad tone is. Now, everything I'll share with you will be my opinion. If you like my tone, I'm going to show you how I get it and some of the things that I look for while tweaking my tones. If you don't like my tones, you're not going to like what I have to say. But we're going to cover some effects. For example, I'm probably going to use that song you might have heard, Give Me a Skull Job. In that song, I'm going to play the rhythm, and I'm going to show you how we can maybe have where it sounds like two rhythm guitars in one pass. We're going to play lead. I'll show you how to set all that stuff up. You can steal some of my sounds if you like them. And I'm going to do all this live and in real time. So if there are any imperfections or crashes, you'll be able to see, how I do the workarounds and what I do. I think that's very important. A lot of companies put out videos where they're editing them like crazy, and they're not perfect. I want to, and we at AcmeBarGig, we know that our stuff isn't perfect. Ken will be the first to admit that. But those imperfections are actually kind of good, especially in a guitar tone. It's good to have a little dirt under your fingernails. For example, I've seen long load times in Headcase, which I'm sure some of you have too. I count it to be 11 seconds. It's better than Shred. Shred was at 22 seconds, or actually the first version of Headcase was 22 seconds. So we've improved that. But there's a good explanation which I want to share with you, when we get deeper into this video. So I want to share that. It's really cool. You'll love the explanation. It makes a lot of sense. And I'm going to use Sonar X2 64. The reason being, I've read quite a few posts where people are having problems in the 64-bit realm, and I want to show you the things that I do to make everything work. And we'll just see where we end up. Okay, so let's have some fun with it, and it'll probably be a little embarrassing for me at times, but hopefully you'll have a laugh at my expense and maybe learn something too. So let's see where it takes us.
Alright guys, here we are in Sonar 64. Alright, I have a little backing track of that Give Me a Skull Job thing all queued up with no guitars in it. I'll have to run a click track so I can play the the rhythm guitars for you. But after that, we'll kill that, okay? So, quick little sound check. Alright, so that's the backing I'm going to be using. Alright, so let's get Headcase fired up here and talk about it a little bit, okay? Now, of course, we're going to see a long load time, but that's okay. Let's explain what's going on here while we're waiting this 11 seconds. Alright, according to my sources deep within the company, there's a little Italian guy, a little Dago bastard, that actually is running around creating the heads for you in real time. There are, I believe it's 300,000 things that are happening within Headcase as it's loading the first time. Alright, that's a lot of stuff. It's a very intricate, piece of software. It really is. It really does a lot of cool things. Okay, and, so that is what I was told as far as the load time goes. Alright, each time you open it, all your heads are actually being built. So there's a dude running around putting all the tubes together and all the knobs and everything. So, I think that's pretty good. I don't know of anyone that can do 300,000 things in 11 seconds. So, I think we're ahead of the game because the first build of this was 22 seconds. So I think we've done a good job. Okay, now the first thing we're going to do, let's work on our input gain, okay? Since this is really the coolest, and in my opinion, the most important, how this, software is actually going to work for you, okay? And what the input level does, this is sort of, buffering your signal, giving you a little bit of push before your signal actually enters the software. Okay, so unlike other amp sims, okay, where they don't have this feature, you get loads of gain, but you wonder why you don't quite get the sustain you're looking for. This is where this particular thing can help you a lot. All right, now there's what I like to do is I like to play exactly what I'm going to record. All right, and this allows the input level to be set for what you're actually going to play. There's no sense playing a bunch of lead if right now we're going to record a rhythm track. So we want to actually get everything set for this rhythm track. Okay, now there are a few things that I learned here. The harder that you hit your strings, the less input level you're going to get. Okay, the lighter you hit it, the more input level you're going to get. So you want to kind of get a happy medium. Sometimes, I don't know, sometimes I've had better results with actually, playing the strings lighter. So I get a little bit more input level, and what happens then is we have to come over here to our actual amp gain and drop this down. And you might have to use a little bit more of our noise gate to, keep things nice and tight and noise free. Okay, so the more input level you get, the more you're going to have to use less of this gain. I mean, you can use as much as you want. There are no rules, but it's going to get a little noisy. And one of the things, with Headcase is we have more gain than anyone would ever possibly need in this lifetime. I mean, these plugs are absolutely incredible. I mean, stupendous mode is literally stupendous. I use the crunch mode, and I'll use a stomp box with it, to usually get my tones that I like. So let's get our input level set up. All right, so let's click on this and then do some playing. I have my input set for stereo here. I have a stereo feed. I'm using just a little compressor. Let me show you exactly what I'm sending into the plugin right now. All right, so you should be able to hear that now. That's all I'm sending into the plugin, and there's just a tiny bit of compression on that just to keep my signal nice and conditioned. I like to do that because not only for the conditioning part of it, but it also gives me just a little bit of a more of a real feel, like I'm playing through an amplifier. I'll get a tiny bit more sustain from the compressor, and I'll show you what it sounds like when I turn it off and on and like do a note hold once we get this set up. But let's audition our level and see what we end up with this time. Here we go. Okay, now it's asking me if I want to save this as a default level. We can say yes for now. All right. So let's see what this sounds like when we start really, feeding it into the amp. And let me mute these signals real fast so we don't get any clean sound anymore. What I'm going to do now is, of course, I want to load my head that I use. All right. Okay. There's a couple different ways you can set this up. All right. Let's see what we're getting as far as sound. It sounds great. I'm not getting anything. And the reason for that, most times, okay, is because in 64-bit sonar, Ken has a fix for this, but all we have to do is click on this main, and it usually allows the plugin to work. Let's see if I got lucky. See? Okay, so we did get lucky there. But this is one of the reasons why I wanted to do this video raw and uncut, so you could actually see, those that are having a problem getting this to work in 64, that's what we have to do. Now, I haven't tried JBridge yet. JBridge might eliminate this problem, but like I said, I know Ken has a fix for this. All right, so, but that's what I do for right now. I just click on that main, click this open, click on that, and the plugin just magically starts working. All right, it wasn't, of course, made for 64-bit, so that's one of the workarounds that we have to use. All right, so let's set this up the way I would do it. The first thing I like to do is, if we use the mimic cabs, is I do like cabinet A. I think it sounds good for rhythms. We get a nice good sound out of it. All right, but what I like to do is I like to click on the mic placement, and I like to just bring this to the center and then keep sliding it until it says cap edge. That's where I usually get my best sound. All right, I leave it right at the grill because I think that's a pretty cool tone. All right, now, this amp gets a load of gain. All right, but we're using crunch mode right now. We're not using stupendous. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to back this gain down. All right, and I'm actually going to add I'm going to add the nose driver here. Now we got some noise in there, but our gate takes care of that. And we still have a little bit of noise in there. There's a few different ways you can control the gate. The first way is you can just bring up the threshold until that's gone. All right, now the problem with just using the threshold is when you start to play, it might cut off your tone, okay? You might get a little choke in the sound if you back your volume down. Let's see what we're getting right now, though. That's a pretty mean tone for doing absolutely nothing. I mean, seriously, if you're into a metal tone, that's pretty sick. I've done nothing. So I think that speaks for itself really right there. I'm using a Carvin DC400 custom, which I had made for me. And right into the plugin, I am going through a mixing console, but there are no bells and whistles on the console. No EQ of any type, nothing. All right. But anyway, let's get back to this gate, okay? As I said, we can use the threshold like we did. What I like to do is, so it doesn't choke off our sound, just use a little of it. And you see it's still jumping a little bit on my LED every once in a while. Then we can bring this one up. I can't tell if that says attack or attenuation. I'm really not sure, but we bring this up just a little bit. And then what happens is, when we have that real beefy sound, when we back our volume knob down, it's not going to choke us. Volume knob is back down. You see? And it's nice and clean. And really, that's considering how much gain we have going on here. That's really not a lot of noise. I mean, okay, that's more noise than you would want in a project. But I mean, I've heard things where like, they're making all kinds of noise. And to me, that's a nice little hum, It's really not that bad, considering, I mean, we really have some gain kicked up here. One of the cool things that I test for when I use these plugins is the ability to do a double harmonic. I'm going to raise the gain just a little bit here because I think I can deal with a little more. All right. Another thing is I'm going to back some of the bass down. Now you notice this tone sounds nice and big and thick. That's actually too much bass in a guitar tone. I know it sounds great and it's fine when it's all alone, but if you were to use this tone inside of a mix, okay, that bass is going to walk on things. You're going to wonder, and you'll wonder why you don't hear your guitar tone all the time. You don't need that much bass in a guitar tone. See how we can feel it and hear it? The object of the right amount of bass in a guitar tone is to just hear a little bit. You don't want to feel that chunk like that because you're walking in bass guitar territory. If I put a spectrum analyzer on this sound, you'll see that the bass is really ramping up, and we don't want that, okay? It's not needed. That's why if you're doing a mix and you notice, man, I can't hear my guitar tone, so you keep turning it up in the mix, you keep raising your fader, then it's too loud, or you lose something else, so you start raising that something else. That's frequency masking usually, okay? So we don't want that much bass, so let's curb that a little bit. See how it doesn't have that rumble? You see? Remember that rumble we had when I bring that back up there? You don't want that. These are the things you listen for. Let's double click on that. That's another thing. You can double click on our knobs here, and then it will reset to the center position, the default position. At least most of them. I don't know if they all do that. I always fight with Ken about these knobs. But hear how we have that rumble in there? We don't want that rumble. All right, and sometimes your rumble comes from how much gain you're using. All right, you have to find out whether it's the bass or it's the gain actually doing that. In this particular example, I think it's our bass. I'm going to make this a little bit, like 315 should be good. That's a pretty bad little tone, considering I've done nothing. Okay, seriously, right? I didn't touch any of these knobs but the bass. So when we play, and the great thing about, these sims, we can record a sound and actually tweak it while it's playing back and, get it a little closer to where we want it to be. Okay, but before I do that, I actually want to EQ the sound as an entity, so to speak. And what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how we can make this sound like two guitars in one pass. Now, some of you guys that are into the engineering field, you know about this trick. It's called the Haas effect, and we're just basically going to put a delay on our sound to where it's delaying one side of the signal. And when you do that and you use the effect completely wet, it almost sounds like two guitars playing in one pass. And it's a cool thing to use for live. Now, if you were to record in the studio, you should by rights record your sound 2 times. Like if I was going to record the rhythm track for this, I'd record it one pass through, and then I'd create another track, bring another instance of headcase in, and I would record it again. All right, that's true stereo, where what we're doing here is going to be like a stereo imaging trick. It's great for live. It's great to just have a good tone, but it's cool for something like this, so I don't have to play the part twice, and you'll learn a little something too. All right, so let's go into our effects section right now. All right, and I'm going to get rid of, I just learned this myself. You guys are going to crack up. I mean, I've been working on the development of this thing for probably 2.5 years, and this new version, I'm still learning. I didn't know that there's, more effects that I can fly in from hitting up in here. I was talking to Ken on the phone. I'm like, Ken, what happened to that mountain reverb we had, man? That was so great. He's like, it's still there. I'm like, no, it's not. And he says, yeah, you have to click on this and remove something. So let's do that. Let's bring in the mountain reverb, because what I want to do here, if we listen to the sound, it's a good sound, but notice when I stop playing, it sounds totally dead and direct. There's like no movement of any kind. Okay, so if we add a little of this in here, all right, and let's reduce the size, because we don't want any big long tails, or you don't want to sound like you're playing in an arena. Basically what we want to do here is model of somewhat like a guitar in a room, to where it's not, tailing off like crazy. So let's bring this down to like, I don't know, let's try 90 and see what we get. Here, when I stop playing, it's got a little bit of carry on the end, as opposed to this. Hear how it's real direct and in your face? Where now we have a little bit of air movement. Okay? So, I'm not going to go crazy. You can, use your own reverb or whatever, but I just wanted to show you how we can just add a little bit of depth into the tone so it's not so direct and in your face. And you can use impulses. You don't have to use the mountain verb. You can use whatever you want to put a little bit of reverb on your sound. Okay? Now, this other thing that I'm going to do, we're going to actually hit up this delay here. Okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to, use what is called the Haas effect. And basically what that is, all right, in this particular example, at least the way I'm going to do it, there's a few different ways you can do it. I'm going to turn the delay on, and I'm going to go completely down to 0. We don't want any feedback. We want the wet all the way up, and we want the dry all the way down. On this side, we're going to delay the right side by, let's try 28. Or 21's good. Wait a minute, can I use shift? Oh, great. Let's try 24. All right, we want the feedback all the way down. When you're moving the knobs, you can press the shift key and get, all the numbers in between, and left click and move your knobs up and down, and you'll get, every number. Okay, we want this to be wet, and we want dry completely out. Okay, so what's happening is we have a regular signal that is 0 milliseconds on the left, and then we're delaying the right side by 24 milliseconds. Because we have no dry sound in here, it's going to create this little wall that sounds like two guitars in one. Okay? So watch what happens when I kick that on. I'm going to play a little chord here, and watch how big the sound gets and spreads. Pretty cool, huh? That's not bad for one guitar. And again, we haven't really done anything. All we did was set our input gain. We added a little bit of, some of the room verb here, a little bit of a Haas delay, adjusted the bass. I didn't even get into the mids, trebles, or anything, okay? And, all I did was just open this up. There's no other EQ or compression or any studio tricks going on. And I think it sounds really good, considering we've done just about nothing. Keeping all that in mind, all right, let's try to play a little bit with this and see what the tone actually sounds like, and, we can tweak it a little bit further, okay? Another thing I like to do is, you see this anti-fizz here? This is almost like a low pass, pretty much, but it's going to get way up there where you get fizz in a guitar tone, and it'll take it all out of there. For example, all right, if we play... When I was playing before, did you hear how it had like a, like a high-end thing? We just took that out of there. Now, you want some in there because you want your guitars to cut through and have a little presence. However, if you're getting too much of that stuff in, like once you start adding treble and maybe a little presence in your tone, you're going to get a little bit more of that, where this anti-fizz can take some of that out of there and give you a nice, well-rounded tone without sounding too harsh or abrasive. Hear it? When I slid it up, it gave it more of a zzz kind of sound. It had more sizzle in it. Let's keep it one down and see how we fare. That's usually where I usually drop it by one, depending on what I'm working with. All right, so that's still the tone we're using for right now. And we'll adjust everything accordingly once we hear how it sounds within the mix. Now, that's a very important thing for you to consider when you're actually working on a mix. You can come up with the greatest guitar sound known to man. If it doesn't work within the mix when we start playing and recording, you've wasted your time. So that's why I'm not spending a lot of time with this. Now, if we were miking up a cabinet, we've got to get everything as great as we can get it, because then you're stuck with, pretty much a destructive print. Where right now everything we're doing is non-destructive. We can tweak the entire tone in real time, while we're mixing, which I think is very important, and it's actually a luxury, Oh yeah, before I do that, let me show you what's happening with this little compressor, and I'm gonna show you this double harmonic thing that I was talking about. The first thing I want you to listen for is I'm just gonna hit a note, and I'm just gonna do like a string bend, kind of like a shake. And I want you to hear what happens when I kill the little compressor that I have here. Actually, let's kill it now. All right, I'm just going to do a note hold, like kind of like a shake, and you're going to hear how the note kind of dies out. And when I kick this little compressor in, it kind of brings it back to life a little bit. That's what it off. It just added just a little bit more zip. It's really not adding noise or anything. It's just grabbing the tone and conditioning it and keeping it nice and tight, all right? Which I think is really important, for these amp sims. And it gives me more of a real feel. You can do like your crazy trem stuff, and it doesn't lose sustain. I'm at a very low volume. If you guys heard how low I really am to get that much sustain out of this thing, it's crazy. Honest when I tell you, it's so low because I don't want my microphone and everything to like bleed through while I'm recording this for you. But let's try this dual harmonic trick if I can pull this off. What I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to do a little dive bomb and come up on a harmonic, and then I'm going to lightly tap another harmonic that is, an octave away. And with most of these amp sims, they're not able to do this, okay? It dies out so fast you can't get to the second harmonic. So I'll show you what I mean. You'll hear it'll go, wow, you'll see. That's two harmonics. To me, that's a good test of sustain on these plugins, So that's what we're doing as far as, my little compressor, and I wanted to show you the little harmonic thing. So let's record a track. with this and see how it sounds, and we can tweak things a little bit further. Okay. Unfortunately, you got to put up with my little metronome because I won't know where to start on this piece. I won't play the whole thing, but I'll just kind of give you a general idea of what's going on here.